Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. So when we're going through the presentation, if you want to just, tweet at MnSearch, use the hashtag MnSearch to kind of tag all the wonderful tidbits that you're learning, that would be awesome. First, I want to thank our sponsors. So Rocket 55, they are actually our virtual event sponsor. They are sponsoring all the virtual events so we can make these free to you. So last time I tried this, I had everyone wave, and turns out no one could see each other. So maybe, how about if you're from Rocket, just maybe throw a little hello in the chat so we can kind of get you represented here. And then we've also got Rank Crankers. Again, if you're from Rank Crankers, please throw a little hello in the chat, say hi. Click 360. We got Nordic Click. I know Brooke, one of our fearless board of directors, she is from Nordic Click, so I know we at least have one there. And then finally, Hook Agency. Love those guys. So if any of the people from Hook are on here, make sure to say hello. And if you are interested in sponsoring MnSearch, please email sponsorships@mnsearch.org. Also, Jason Sem is our sponsorship director. So yeah, just send him a little message on the chat. And these are our fabulous board of directors. Oops, let's go back. I've got this. Yes, so these are our board of directors. We updated this slide with the grand, added some names here. So you can say hello to us. And actually something we didn't share when we were going through the happy hour, if you would like to connect with anyone, please just throw in the LinkedIn, your name, or throw in the chat, your LinkedIn, your name, Twitter, email, however you like to be contacted, and let people connect with you. So as I mentioned before, these events are free. Thank you again to Rocket 55. But we, eventually will get back to the in-person events, and we would love to have you join us as a member and help support our nonprofit org. So if you are interested at all in becoming a member, just head to our website or email us at members@mnsearch.org. If you're not sure yet, contact any one of us as well, and we'd be happy to tell you all the reasons why we love MnSearch and why we want you as a member. So the MnSearch Summit, this is an annual conference that we hold every year. So you may have heard that this year is postponed, and I say postponed instead of canceled because most of our fabulous lineup has actually already agreed to join us again next year on June 18th in 2021. So that is going to be an awesome experience. And actually that kind of leads me to the next announcement, which is one of these fabulous keynotes will actually be joining us for our monthly event in June. So we are having Brittany Muller from Moz come on. So we will have a lot more information all about that, but just wanted to kind of share that and get everyone excited. Brittany is so awesome, and it's an honor to be able to have her speak with us. And yeah, we'll hope to see you in June for sure. And now I'm done talking. Let's get to Navah and her infinite wisdom. She is going to be talking today about unlocking ROI out of any budget. So let's give her some air claps. And with that, Navah, I'll let you take it away.
Perfect. You might have to stop sharing.
I can do this. I got this.
Oh, I can take it.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Can you guys see my deck? Tell me when.
Yes. Yep, we can see it.
So a couple of notes before we begin. I am getting over a cold I have had for 2 months, so if I mute myself, it's just because I don't want to cough in your ear. And the second, you might be able to tell from the deck title, I am an avid Star Wars fan. So any questions, anything you want to talk about PPC related or Star Wars related, I am your girl. I love, love, love Star Wars. And so I could not think of any better theme for unlocking ROI than talking about it from the standpoint of Star Wars bounty hunters. And I am a unapologetic bounty hunter of happiness and profit. And I do see ROI from both of those standpoints. And that means that I'm focused on the business metrics of my stakeholders, whether that's clients, whether that's my own personal brand. You kind of want to think about it from both standpoints. I know when to invest and when to hold back, but I also really live for the thrill of the kill or winning for my stakeholders. Just as much as I'll call myself a bounty hunter of happiness and profit, I am also very much a PPC Sith. For anyone that knows Star Wars at all, you know that Sith are rather unfairly referred to as the bad guys, when really all they do is channel their passions and excitement for success and growth into victory, and break the chains of what they think might be possible and grow even further. So I'm going to encourage you to really think about not just profit from a bounty hunting standpoint, but also shaking up some conventions on what might be limiting our success. And let's be honest, talking money is hard. It's really stressful to think about it, whether you're thinking about payroll or taxes, overhead, or whether you're talking about it from the standpoint of, hey, I need to invest in this because you've asked me to generate you leads. This is what they cost, and you get pushback. So we're going to focus today on how to turn that conversation on its head, talking about profit, talking about ROI. And so by the end of this session, I really truly hope, whatever form of bounty hunter you want to take, that you will be fellow bounty hunters of happiness and profit. So as was mentioned, my name is Navah Hopkins. I'm the Director of Paid Media for Hennessey Digital. I would greatly appreciate if you would tag not only Minnesota Search, but also Hennessey Digital. Be appreciative, but also feel free to tweet at me any questions. Aside from running accounts for Hennessey, I'm also the Ask the PPC for Search Engine Journal. So if you have any questions that you really would like answered, this is a great way to make sure I answer them, and I make a full post about it. So if you have those questions, absolutely let me know. So for today, we'll be covering the baseline questions to ask, really how to suss out that ROI equation, especially if clients or bosses are struggling to give you the information that you need to achieve ROI. We'll also talk about really 3 core cases, and then also pandemic budgets. So poor performance caused by lack of budget, when we can't spend the budget, and when the account is winning. Because those are 3 cases that we do want to think about ROI, budget conversations, and then how do we pivot in this pandemic world. So the baseline questions to ask. I think about hunting profit in terms of reconnaissance. And so the first question is, are all parts of the business equal, or are some worth more? There were some really interesting questions and ideas posed by the SEOs in the room about how do we suss out what parts of the business do we want to go after. And what's kind of interesting from a paid standpoint is that if you know that there are certain parts of the business that just by the nature of what they are, the auction prices will be really high, but you know that those are super useful terms, amazing SEO play. Vice versa, if you know that there are certain parts of the business that you have to rank for, you have to get something there, but it's going to be a long slog to create the content to really generate that presence, it could be worth a paid play. So we really want to have on the onset, regardless of whether you're organic SEO, organic social, organic paid, or paid search, paid social, we want to evaluate the parts of our business. We also want to evaluate the hubs of our high value customers, or whether they're truly spread out. A very big mistake folks will make is that they'll set a campaign intended for their entire market, every part of their business, but then in reality, you need to still prove out that campaign. So we want to think about if there are hubs that we can focus on. I also find that it's really troubling. People will think about their budgets, their profit, their conversions equally, when in fact a phone lead versus a website lead might have different values. You might have an intake team who crushes life at closing that deal, You might be an e-commerce person who never wants to talk to a person ever because that gets in the way of your bottom line. So we really do want to think about whether web leads versus phone leads, mobile leads versus desktop leads are worth more or less. So these are the 3 core metrics that I use. I recognize that there's many different perspectives in paid. This is kind of how I talk about budgets and ROI with clients. Impression share, so of all available impressions, how many are we getting? Auction price, so pragmatically, what is it going to cost to get what we need? And then conversion rate to value. So are we converting at a high rate? Are the leads turning into true cases? Hennessey Digital does a lot of legal work, so a lead isn't always a case, but we need to kind of defend that case value. And then also, if a CPA is high, but our conversion value is demonstratively higher, we might be okay. So one of the things I found while working at WordStream, worked there for around 5 years. So this is a data set from late Q4 of last year. So if there are questions about it, I'm happy to talk through. But based off of the data, we found that the average impression share was about 47%. And what I found really hopeful about this slide is not that people are losing more than 50% of their impression share, and that's kind of where everybody is. It's that they're losing most of their impression share due to rank, which means that these are things within our control. Budget was not the problem. The problem was structure choices, the problem was bidding, and these are all things that we can control. So that's something that we should take as a message of hope, that whatever ROI problems we have to solve, we can actually solve them. Because sometimes if budget is the problem, you can't really solve it because you have to just find a different channel. But in this case, the issue was rank. So I promised my dogs to start barking. So when we're thinking about auction prices, we really want to be mindful of industry. Unless you're Cad Bane and you're just an amazing gunslinger, you do not want to bring a pistol to a lightsaber duel. And vice versa, we want to also think about whether a different channel might serve based off of those auction prices. If you know you have an easier time winning, they're outside, so hopefully we're done with the barking. If you do have an easier time winning on mobile versus desktop, we might want to invest a little bit more aggressively there. So in this particular instance, mobile had a 4.39% click-through rate and a 34.79 CPA. So I don't really care that the average cost per click is a little bit higher because I'm getting more value there. So we really do want to look at what value we're getting out of a given device, out of a different channel, to know whether it makes sense to focus. Now this is my checklist, and I'm gonna kind of linger here a bit if you want to jot it down or if there are questions about why this is my checklist. But these are the things that before I go back to a client to talk about raising the budget or helping to get more funds invested, I'll look at my location targets. I'll look whether I'm bidding against myself with duplicate keywords. I'll look at the structure of the campaign. I'll look at the match types of the keywords, and I'll look at my different bidding strategies. This is that last one, bidding strategies, is particularly important now. Bidding strategies have been kind of faltering since COVID. There are a number of theories why, but there's actually been a shift away from automated bidding strategies and more to manual. Because Google has actually been struggling to bid enough to get you to rank. So before we look to raise our budget, we really do want to look at these things. And as a disclaimer, clients are not going to care about click-through rate or quality score or impression share or extensions or match types. So even though these are our tools and this is how we know what levers to pull, I really encourage you, as you're talking about ROI and talking about profit and talking about increasing investment, we want to depreciate how much we actually talk about these metrics. And instead focus on quality of leads, return on ad spend, the volume, so long as the quality isn't getting lost, year-over-year growth, so that we're accounting for seasonality. And this one's, I think, the hardest, the growing the value of a customer. Now, depending on who you are, you may have a great relationship with your client or a great relationship with your internal team, so it's your in-house, so you know customer values. But sometimes it can be really tough to get clients to give us the value of a customer or the lifetime of a customer. So this last point, if we want to spend a little bit more time, maybe during the Q&A, talking through strategies there, happy to do it. But this right here, that growing the value of a customer, is actually how I find the easiest path to get an integrated approach. So we were talking during the networking section about syncing in analytics to build out those audiences. 100%, that's where you want to focus in terms of nurturing a customer on renewals, upselling, things like that. So if we want to grow the budget, we need to speak their language, and that language is profit. So we're now going to dive into those 3 use cases I talked about. Again, if there are any questions, please put them in the Q&A and we'll get to them at the end. So performance caused by lack of budget. Sorry, I really don't want to cough in your guys' ears. So we know that wasted spend is the enemy, but the problem is it can be really tough to get budget if you know that you're struggling for budget, if there's even a hint of wasted spend. The problem with that mindset, and this is a very common issue of achieving ROI and helping clients understand the ROI of their investment, is if you start with a campaign budget that's too low, you're going to lose from the beginning. Because what's really fascinating is that if you cannot get at least that average, that 50%, you're actually going to end up with too few clicks that any value could happen from your search campaign, or to be fair, your Facebook campaign. There is something to be said for the impression play of display or YouTube. So if you truly are budget constrained, those are absolutely channels to explore. But if you cannot fit at least those 10 clicks in your day, you may want to reevaluate search. So I like to look at, excuse me one second. I like to look at grouping my auction prices. So not only do I look for the service value, but I also like to see, is there a range in my auction prices or are they fairly closely grouped? So in this particular case, we have a few that are fairly close, but then we have that outlier in dog training Denver. So if we were to include that keyword, we would need at least $100 a day budget, whereas the others could absolutely get away with $15 to $25, maybe $30 a day. So if you have those outliers in there, they're absolutely going to hurt your ability to get the budget to go where it needs to go, and therefore achieve the ROI that you're looking to achieve. And in terms of top of click or top of page cost per click, this is what we really want to help our clients understand, is that we don't need to be that #1 birthday gifts for mom, flowers for mom from your flowers spot. The ego play is only really helpful on mobile, where it's the only spot that will serve fully above the fold. What we do need to make sure of, though, is that we are in that top of page. We transitioned away from average position to top of page and absolute top. I like to see, at minimum, at a 75% in the top of page for anything I'm going for, because otherwise I'm also setting myself up for failure. I'm not serving in a spot where I will get those good engagements. So just because it's a more expensive click doesn't necessarily mean it's a problem. So if we can't fit those ideas in, I really do encourage you to look at close variants. I know close variants are really annoying and terrible, and we all hate how much they wrecked our accounts if you're in the paid world, and if you're in the SEO world, your paid counterparts probably yelled about this for quite a while. But what's actually really interesting is that with close variants, it actually enabled us to start going after certain ideas that, even though it wasn't exactly what we were, it meant the same thing to Google or to Bing. And so we were able to secure those leads and get enough volume to make the campaign worthwhile, to achieve that ROI. So in this particular case, moving versus rigging, even though the account wanted machinery moving or movers, rigging actually came in at a significantly cheaper rate, as we were able to fit in more clicks in our day. So by just focusing on rigging, we were able to secure that many more leads. So I definitely encourage you to audit your search terms report, which I talk about Next, just to find those champions. I highly, highly also encourage you to explore running in the early days of your campaigns. And this is going to be super controversial, and I'm ready for the debate during the Q&A. But actually run some broader terms at the onset to teach you how your people search, so that when you invest, you're investing off of data. If you build out everything from the beginning and then you have to clean it up, not only is that really stressful for you and your client, it's costing them money for you to go do that work. So that's actually eating into their profit. So if we start from a data acquisition standpoint in the beginning, and then comb through and find those winners, absolutely, we can pause out those broad terms later, transition those new terms in. But we also want to be really mindful in that search for data that we don't go after super broad terms just in general. So a 2-word keyword like dog rehabilitation, where it was meant for dog training, pulled us into an auction price that truly is not going to ever make sense because it's a completely different service. So in this particular case, it was 162% more than the average and had no chance of being profitable. So I highly, highly recommend, if you're going to run broad terms like a 2-word keyword on ModBroad, really make sure that your negative list is robust and or your client is bought in to a super expensive data acquisition phase, but will make it cheaper later on. So long as you're transparent with your client and you explain to them the mechanics of it, it's a lot easier to unpack. But yeah, we definitely want to be careful about how broad our concepts are, and we're really mindful about our negatives. Now, if they are all too high, we really do need to find out if the clients can live without the traffic. There's a couple of opportunities here. One I find that's highly underused is using extensions to communicate those valuable ideas without necessarily paying the premium. So a really good example of this in the legal space, construction accidents and construction cases are actually very expensive. So they typically have a higher than average auction price for legal. So I'll make those extensions on my personal injury ads or on my branded ads. And so the price I pay for that click is for whatever the keyword is for the ad, rather than that really expensive construction one. Vice versa, if there's an idea that's maybe, it's a good description, but it's maybe not necessarily something that I want to actively target, great candidate for a call out. I also highly recommend leveraging bid adjustments, particularly if you are shifting away from automated bidding into more manual. Brooke and I actually had a great conversation about this during our last talk. So we're actually in an era where I would side with her, shifting away from automated, at least for now, and more to manual with bid adjustments, because you, the human, know where you need to go more aggressive and less, where right now the computers are being a little bit finicky. Maybe in Q3 it'll get better, but definitely bid adjustments can help. I also strongly recommend looking at how many strategic objectives you're trying to ask a single campaign to do. The most common culprit is lumping branded ad groups and competitor ad groups in the same campaigns as general service. Branded ideas tend to be cheaper and convert better. Competitor ones tend to be more expensive just because it's competitors, so you have a lower odds of converting. But what's interesting is that they'll actually spike your general service campaign and make it tougher for Google to understand that there's a lot of quality in your general service. Also, it's very easy, particularly if you have maximized clicks or broad match, or to be honest, if you don't have your negatives perfectly set, for those branded ideas to steal that traffic. So you really want to make sure that you have a campaign per strategic objective. So just to put this in context, the daily budgets for at least one lead, and I use 10% and 1% here. These are not concrete guaranteed numbers, but say you did have a 10% conversion rate, you would need, say, a $67.50 per day versus $6.75 for 1%. And that's based off of a $6.75 cost per click. That's the average for legal. So we want to be really, really mindful here when we're having those conversations, A, what the daily budget needs to be, but then also reminding clients that it's going to average out across 30.4 days. So there will be times where it will up to double. There are times where it will, it might underspend. If you are really struggling to build that budget piece out, Bing is not a bad network, or Microsoft Ads is not a bad network. And odds are you already have a structure set up that will perfectly suit it. So just setting it up with the import is perfectly easy. And once you set the import up, you can change the name of the campaign. It's totally fine. The idea carries over. There is actually another added value to Bing and to Microsoft in that you don't necessarily have to have campaigns per location or per schedule. That actually can be done at the ad group level. So if you found yourself having to build out multiple campaigns for lots of different service areas, like if you're a national brand, but you need to cover all those different locations, target by how people search, how they speak, you can do that at the ad group level with Bing, therefore having one budget versus, say, 5 or 6. So when we're talking about this, we really do need to be transparent about industry costs and whether the budget expectations are realistic. I strongly, strongly recommend being friends with your SEO and social counterparts. There are absolutely options that work within budgets. We just have to find them. And we want to give realistic timelines for growth. So if you find that you can't spend the budget, so you have the money, it's kind of the opposite problem. It can be really tough to ask for more if you're struggling to spend the existing. This is true all the time, but particularly true now when campaigns might be struggling to get their feedback under them. And this is likely when we are losing that impression share due to rank. And there's a couple of reasons for it. You might be targeting too many things, be it strategic objectives, be it locations, be it audiences. Your bids and auction prices may not be aligned. So I had that 10% rule before. I like to fit at least 10 clicks in my day. If you have keywords that would eat up 70% of your budget and keywords that would use 7% of your budget, there's a mismatch there. And then also there just might not be search volume. So there's only so many signals that we can reasonably ask a campaign to take into account. I don't like to exceed more than 5 locations without a bid adjustment because I find that it's really, really, really tough for the budget to know where to go if you're not giving it that signal. But then also there's just different auction prices, different ways people search. You want to be really mindful of that. It is also worth noting that on locations, there are different auction prices per location. So just like there's different auction prices per language, we also want to think about that by location. Case in point, when we're looking at the US, Canada, the UK, we see that 68 cents, 73 cents, 67 cents versus Mexico and Argentina, it's half the price. So if you're setting that budget and you're trying to distill ROI, you want to be sure that you can service those areas, but you also might have a conversation with the team that, hey, on the paid side, we're going to go after this group. Sorry, one second. Sorry. Getting the pups out so that you guys don't get another barking around. But yeah, we just want to be careful about the value of the location as well, and our ability to service, get those quality leads. So just because it's cheap doesn't necessarily mean it's better. Number of ad groups can really be an issue. 5 to 7 is my ratio. Some people will say 10. I really don't like to go over 5 to 7. And it's specifically because 60% of the impressions in this particular campaign are all going to one ad group. There are 25 of them in here. And ironically, in this particular case, there was another ad group that got almost no impressions, but they were responsible for the majority of the quality leads and the better cost per acquisition. So we really do want to be careful about how many ad groups we're asking a single campaign to support. Of course, if you're not bidding enough, you're never going to get enough success. It is worth noting This issue has been coming up more and more since COVID. So if you had yourself on automated bidding, I would actually take it off and put it on manual just for a moment, check your bids, because there is a chance that you're unintentionally being forced to underbid. And I did mention before, but it's worth repeating, Google can up to double your budget, but you can't expect consistent volume if you're only banking on the doubling of the budget. Because again, you want to make sure that you can get at least one qualified lead per day out of transactional search. So search volume is an important mechanic. These are the terms that you want to hand off to your SEO team. On the SEO side, they have the ability to build amazing content to really generate that interlinking that's super powerful. And that could be a great home for those one-off conversions that are super long tail, super useful, but we can't force Google to put budget behind. So if you see in your search terms report a lot of those long tail searches, make it a practice to auto sync those over to the SEO team, just like the SEO team should be sharing with you some of those super transactional terms that maybe are stuck in position 5 or lower. And it is worth stating, Google struggles to put ads on research-oriented pages. So how to house train dog is not going to get an ad because you're looking to do it yourself. So if you're setting up your campaigns to only answer those sorts of questions, odds are you're going to get really frustrated. But those pages could be important to clients. We do need to serve our Sith Lords. So here's a couple of solutions. Give me a second. Turn important low volume ideas into site links and callouts, as I mentioned before. I also like to create low budget experiment campaigns to house all of the brilliant ideas that my clients might have that don't touch my campaigns, so that I can truthfully say I'm running the idea, but it's not impacting their success. Sometimes clients don't actually know what will serve them best. And so in defending their ROI and helping them achieve as much profit as possible, having that low budget experiment idea lets you see it, but it doesn't impact your overall success. I also highly, again, encourage cross-selling within agencies that do both SEO and PPC, or having a friend that you love referring content out to if you're the PPC, or a PPC friend if you're the content person. Absolutely great way to achieve ROI for your clients. That helps them think of their marketing as a holistic picture, not just tasks. So if the account is winning, we're happy. Like we got our bounty, we got our payday, but we want more. There's always more to be had. So before we begin, there's a couple of questions we have to ask ourselves. Can your client truly handle more leads right now, or are they at a capacity? It is super easy to bury someone who says, I can handle everything and success, because they don't actually realize that they'd have to hire an intake team to go from, say, 10 leads a week to 40 leads a week. You want to be mindful of that. Also, if this is seasonal, it might make sense to kind of take these lessons learned, document everything, and then hold that increase in budget for next season. So we want to be mindful of seasonality. And we also may want to think about scaling our existing initiatives or testing and building out new ones. So if we held back on certain parts of the business because we didn't make enough money at the time, now might be a time to begin testing, building those out. So I look for, in a winning campaign, that we're at least 75% impression share overall, not top or absolute top, just straight up impression share, and then it's live for at least 3 months. I like a quarter of data because that ensures, A, we've passed the learning period, and B, I know definitively what sort of search terms are going to work, and there's probably a chance for us to expand. If we're still in month 1, month 2, odds are we're still kind of cutting our teeth on scale quality of lead. But we don't want to dump a large amount of money all at once. That is how we end up in the Sarlacc pit, and then while it's true we become Mandalore, we're still not quite happy. I like to raise budget by at least 10 to 15% each week over a month. If I know I'm going to be increasing budget, I might also test or create a new campaign that starts off at a higher rate, depending. So if you're using automated bidding, changing the budget resets the learning period, so you would want to do a net new budget. If you're on manual, that 10 to 15% is a good bet. So I love display. I love display even more now because display is an absolute steal. And there's so many more levers at our disposal. But the great story here, and this is, I use this example a lot, but it's just a really, really good one. When I was adopting my dog, whose name is, of course, HK47, for those of you that know the Knights of the Old Republic, and Solo was coming out, I actually got this ad for the Shelter Project and adopting versus shopping on an article talking about the Solo movie. And so what I loved about that is that it celebrates everything that's great about display right now, which is you can target people off of their in-marketness and their interests. You can layer their buying behaviors and the types of content they consume and where they're consuming it. So absolutely, absolutely, display is a fantastic way to blitz the market. It is worth noting that display conversion rates will be lower. We absolutely do not want to be on last click attribution if we're going to use display. And again, the cost per clicks are dramatically cheaper. So this was a test we ran, and again, it was looking at 4,000 accounts with no budget under $1. And so when we're looking at $500 to 701 monthly clicks, for those of you that are PPCs, that's a stone's throw away from RLSA eligible. So if you are truly low on search budget, you may want to begin with display rather than search, so that you're able to build a list so that when you're talking about the ROI of your spend, you can talk not just about the dollars earned and profit, you can also talk about the quality of lead, that you've pre-qualified this traffic so well that they're exactly the right folks, they're speaking sort of exactly the right message. And we also cannot forget about Facebook. This is a Spark Central study that found that it had a 26% conversion rate off of clicks, and yes, the click-through rate will be lower. The cost per click for Facebook comes in depending on how engaging your ad is. So $1.72 is the average, but again, it's determined by how many folks click on your ad. And this is actually something I need to put out here in this group. I realize this is a search talk or a search group, but social needs some love too. A lot of folks who used to run Facebook think about it from ad set level budgets, and it's shifted away to campaign level budgets. So we actually do want to kind of shift our thinking and have Facebook strategies and budgets aligned like we have search budgets. So for a really long time, you had to kind of shift your thinking. If I'm in search mode, if I'm in Google mode, I'm at campaign objectives. If I'm in Facebook or social mode, I'm at ad set level objectives. Now we can judge ROI based off of campaign roles. And you can test based off of your need to test, not have to make the ROI case for every single test you want to make. And just as an FYI, 90% of time spent on mobile is on Facebook. And that's again from that same Spark study. We are in Facebook is worth some investment. It doesn't need to be all, but as far as test goes, I cannot recommend it enough. And by running your campaigns on other networks, you can expand the Google market. This is a study done by the amazing Mark Irvin. I cited it a lot. If you're only running Google, there is a limit to your market share. So if you are finding that you're struggling to get more leads, generate more profit, and you're capped out on your impression share, layer in display, layer in Bing, layer in Facebook, and use analytics audiences to expand that reach. But it is important to note that new campaigns are expensive, just like new accounts are expensive. So the first 1 to 2 months of the campaign will be about data acquisition. And when calculating ROI, talking ROI, I find that it's really important to set that expectation at the beginning. It's actually something I build into contracts with clients, is a map of the first month or two is all about data. And it's only at day 90 that we begin evaluating performance. And that may feel really weird for all of us that are like, we have to drive success like right now and we want to do as well as we can. But by building in that first 60 days as data acquisition, you also ensure that you're able to make decisions off of data, not just what you think is right, but may not always play out the way you suspect. So I wanted to end by talking about COVID and how that's impacted things. And I wanted to actually share a story from my own experience running an account, and it was kind of it was a bit of an awakening that automation has, for as many good things as it has going for it, this is not a good time to rely too heavily on automation. And I say this as someone who's very much bought into the idea that automation can help us. Long term, absolutely, it's fantastic, but this is kind of something just to think about. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we do want to talk about turning costs into investment, money into profit. And during a crisis, you may be tempted to completely turn off your marketing dollars. A lot of folks did this. But the problem is that a prolonged pause can actually hurt campaign performance. And this is something that happened to actually one of our largest spending accounts. They went from spending $180,000 in February to struggling to hit 40, and they had actually agreed to spend $170,000 this month, and they could not spend it because of that automation piece. Getting turned off made it really challenging for those campaigns to reactivate because they were turned off for so long. And as a result, we saw an 88% drop in conversions. Vice versa, we have another account that stayed on through COVID. And while it is true that spend depreciated, and that actually played a little bit into people pulling back funds, the spend was fairly consistent. Like they were happy to spend about the same, and this is kind of where the spend was, and the spend stayed consistent throughout February to March, April into May. And what's fascinating is that the conversions, yes, there was a landing page change, so that is 100% I own, that could have been part of it. But they were actually able to dramatically increase the number of conversions that they got rather than struggling. So my message here is not always keep campaigns on, but there is something to be said for having a $5-10 a day budget so that you do not lose thousands later during that crisis. And I completely understand, and I've had those conversations with clients where they just don't want to do it, but then you kind of have to help them understand that there's a 3 to 4 week ramp up period, and that's what we did with this client. So May, we kind of knew going in would likely not be successful for the larger spending one, but automated bidding had stopped working, so we had to take that manual control. And again, the landing pages absolutely did help us in that situation, but only because the account consistently had traffic, and so we were able to really get that test in motion. And we were talking about it a little bit during the networking. YouTube is such a steal right now. I cannot overstate the value of YouTube in terms of getting in front of your users, auction prices, and your ability to generate real quality conversions. I also really do love the Google Display Network. Shopping, if you're e-commerce, obviously, go play with the free shopping. One thing I will throw out there on Search Partners, Search Partners has been kind of cannibalizing budget, so if you leave it on, you are going to see more of your budget going to Search Partners because it will have an easier time going there. So be very mindful whether you're okay having that traffic go to search partners. If we want to talk about what search partners is in the Q&A, happy to do it. So take heart, just because Google search is slightly down doesn't mean that we don't have opportunities through other channels. So my rallying cry for all of you in unlocking profit and unlocking ROI, we need to build trust. We need to take actions that are transparent and that show the clients that we care about them and their success so that they are bought into our vision of how to help them achieve ROI. We want to use extensions to promote expensive ideas when your budget truly can't. We need to be okay taking that creative step. We need to honor thy bid to budget ratio and conversion rates. If we know a certain part of our business is going to do well, absolutely go heavy on it. And we do want to check for those alternative ways to achieve expensive traffic. I am happy to talk during the Q&A more about YouTube if we would like. But again, if search is the best way to get that traffic and we know it, we do need to invest. And acquisition costs do go down with increased exposure. Display is really good for bringing in those audiences. And with that, I really appreciate you humoring me and my Star Wars PPC rants and my puppies who rudely interrupted us. And I will happily take any questions that folks would like to ask.
Awesome. Navah, thank you so much for being here tonight. That was amazing. At this point, I think we're going to take Q&A, and I think Abby's going to facilitate the questions that we have in chat in our Q&A section here. So Abby, what kind of questions do we have?
First of all, Navah, echoing Josh, that was so awesome. Thank you for sharing such specific and thoughtful insights. I will start with the first question from Ken Chang. Thoughts on moving budgets from mobile to desktop?
It truly depends on your industry and what you're seeing. So mobile is really, really good if you need calls. Always will be. With people home right now, we're in front of our computers. But what's actually really interesting is that when I'm on my computer, I have my phone right with me. So just because people are home doesn't necessarily mean that they're not looking at their phones or not playing with their phones. We just need to be mindful about message. So I think this is a good time to test taking off bid adjustments from mobile and desktop and see how it plays out. And then after 2 weeks, make a decision. You also could test having a campaign that's just for mobile and a campaign that's just for desktop. I realize that that's super old school at this point, but that is a test worth running, particularly if you find that the creative that works well, the keyword ideas that work well are different. I would love if and when we let folks back into panel mode, if we're doing that, for the fellow PPCs to weigh in, because that's my perspective, but we have a bunch of really clever PPCs in the room, so hopefully they'll be willing to.
I think we're gonna keep everybody in attendee mode and do the Q&A kind of like this. But if anybody who's in the chat has any further elaboration that you'd like to make, or maybe you'd like to challenge Navah's opinion, go ahead and put something into chat, and we'll be able, or in the Q&A, and we'll be able to kind of convey your thoughts here as well. All right, other questions?
Yes, we have one from Grace Becker. This is a higher level, more general SEO question, but I often find myself as a user actually avoiding the above the fold results because I know they've been sponsored. Is that a concern for SEO professionals? Are there ways that tendency could be countered? And I think this is a question that's both related to SEO and paid, for sure.
So I want to make sure I understand the question. Is the question, what do we do about people that know that marketing exists and above the folds are going to be ads? Or is the question, I just want to make sure I understand, is that the question?
From what I understand, the question is kind of like for the users that understand, they're more savvy, like I know this is an ad, how do you counter that?
So there is always going to be a group of people that know that they're ads. Like I actually will only click on an ad if I know I'm in the market for a thing, because I feel really bad costing people money if I know I'm not going to click on it. I, however, am a very small percentage of the population. And what I think a lot of us in marketing struggle with is that we think that everyone is like us. And so if we are going to avoid clicking on an ad, therefore everyone's going to avoid clicking on an ad, or if we're going to only go to the first response, then everyone else is. I will say one of the reasons I actually strive to keep my customers an average position 2 to 3 rather than going for that first spot is I actually find that I get better results in that spot at a cheaper rate. That is one of the ways I counter that idea, and that's there's something I find has worked well. In terms of organic, one thing I didn't really touch on as much, but I for those of you that are service-based, it's super important to sync your GMB, your Google My Business, into your Google Ads account so that you can double hit people with that local search ad. Because what's really interesting is that if it's a local search, that GMB map pack is going to get the lion's share of the engagement. People tend to gravitate towards that because it's an easy interaction. And so if you have the ad and the organic listing, yes, attribution will get weird, but you are going to have kind of that double whammy, and it can lend that level of credibility. In terms of talking clients through why it's important to rank or helping them get over the fact that they're not ranking #1, but they're achieving profit. One tool I particularly like is SEMrush that talks about the value of your traffic. It's a really good metric. But in terms of calculating success, you want to use a call tracking solution or in analytics integrations that will ensure that you have attribution for every single bit of content that you have. Because for those of you that are SEOs in the room, like Google's not nearly as nice to you guys as they are to us who pay for traffic. So if you have to prove out the value of your leads, that for sure is a really good way to do it. I realize that's not at all what was asked, but there's a good question earlier that this is kind of tangentially related to. Sorry for the tangent.
No,
I hope I answered in the realm of what was being asked.
That was great. I just want to give a quick shout out to Brooke. When we were talking about devices, Brooke had mentioned just focusing less on device advertising and more on user experience on all devices.
Yep.
Yeah, totally great. And that could be like keyword by keyword, too. If the intent on a particular phrase is, one thing, it might be suggesting that they're sitting at their desktop doing research about something, and if the keyword intent is something else, it might suggest that they might be on their mobile device, and you should take that into account. So good shout there, Brooke. All right, what other questions do we have?
All right, up next we have a couple from Michelle Stinson Ross. How has search behavior changed?
Well, I didn't realize you wanted a whole other deck. So a couple of quick things. I think we have become more conversational, and this is both on the paid and the organic side in terms of how we search. We take it for granted now that search networks we don't need to put in searches for how they need searches. We put in content, and then they give us back what they think the best answer is going to be. I think we have to really account for the fact that there's over 100 different search result pages that could serve. And so the experience that you get when you do a search at one point is going to be very different than the search that you do at a second point. A really good example of this, actually, I know I keep giving YouTube shout outs. The content that gets served to me in the morning is actually very much more serious than the content that gets served in the afternoon. So I'll get news satire in the morning, but then I get American Idol, Star Wars info, puppies in the afternoon. Because like Google understands that I'm in relaxation mode in the afternoon. In the morning, I'm in far more serious mode. In terms of the searches themselves, if you don't engage with a particular type of content for long enough, you'll actually stop getting that content. So that's the warning that you should give to all of your clients. Make them do searches in ad preview diagnosis or any other tool that you want to give them, because otherwise you're creating impressions that don't lead to clicks, and therefore Google's going to stop serving the ad. But then also organically, if you keep doing that search and the spot doesn't come up, it's great that you ranked for it a couple of times, but like the user needs to have to demonstrate that as someone with that kind of need, they find your solution useful. So we want to think not just about how users have changed. We want to think about how have the different platforms evolved and tailor their needs to search. I apologize to any SEOs if I bastardize how you would explain the organic side, but definitely on the paid side, we're very mindful about just how much false positives, false negatives impact how our ads get served.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So we are at about time. We'll do one more question. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, there's a bunch of really good questions. I would actually really appreciate it if it's possible to get the questions exported, and I could maybe like do a blog post.
Definitely.
We would love that. Yeah,
yes,
that would be great.
So we can follow up via email with all of those for sure.
So what is that last question?
Let's see here. So we have a question from David Ericsson. Have you used Google Optimize's URL parameter feature to customize landing pages based on campaign keywords? If so, what are your insights? How did it work?
So we use that more for CRO purposes than we do for Scag, which is usually why people do that, which is that you'd have like a single landing page per keyword. I like it for its CRO purposes. You'll be hard pressed to hear me defend Skags. Now, if the reason why you're changing the page out is for quality score purposes, I would argue there are better uses of your time and functionality. If the reason why you're doing it is because you find that there's a true profit difference between someone who searches for an attorney versus lawyer, but you don't want to have the ad group for both, or ad group or keywords for both, that's a great idea. So it all depends on what you want it to do. If you are curious about talking about the specifics that you're thinking of, I'm happy to also follow up after. But I will say we use it more for CRO purposes than we do for Skags. That's also because I have a deep hatred of Skags. I think they're inefficient and kill ROI.
And for those who don't know, you're talking about single keyword ad groups, right?
Single keyword ad groups, Stag for life, or single theme ad group.
Perfect. Okay. Well, I think man, I wish we had more time, but you know, there are so many great questions here. I'm glad that you're willing to do a bit of a write-up. We'll make sure that everybody gets a chance to see that. We'll send it out via email, social media, all that good stuff. So Navah, before we go tonight, where can people find you? Like where, if they need your help outside of tonight, where can they get a hold of you?
So I've left up the title slide. Feel free to email me, navah@hennessey.com, tweet at me at NavahF. I love helping people, I truly do. So I'm also going to give a shout out. I hold office hours from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern every Saturday. So if you want to just drop in to my Zoom, it's absolutely free. It's my little thing towards helping businesses that maybe got impacted by COVID. So yeah, if you want to drop in, you're more than welcome. Other than that, email me, tweet at me, read the Ask a PPC column, put in questions there. I'm probably going to take some of these questions and have that influence some of those posts, but you guys get the post first.
That's awesome. We really Appreciate your time tonight. And for those of you that want to get a hold of Navah, please do hit her up on that email there. We'd love to get your name added to her list, get you connected to Navah, and make sure that that this community is stronger for all of us having been here together tonight. So we really appreciate it. If you want to be a part of more of these types of events, we'd love for you to go to mnsearch.org, and you'll be able to see all the little links on the site that explains who we are, kind of what we're trying to do, and then how to become a member. It's like 125 bucks a year. It's really, really, really cost effective. The ROI is just like huge gone. We have an amazing NPS score. Everybody really loves us. We have the best events. People tell us all the time. Okay, now it's starting to sound a little hyperbolic here, so we'll move along.
Wait, before you do that, as someone that speaks at international conferences, if you were to go see me or any of the other amazing folks on the MnSearch board at a conference, you're talking thousands of dollars. Whereas
Totally.
MnSearch for 125, it's a no-brainer.
Right.
So even the presenter thinks you should do it.
See, Navah gets it. We understand that because Navah was like super smart, and we understood that from her presentation. So it's no wonder that she gets the value of MnSearch, and we hope that you do too. So if you're not a member, go sign up, and also don't miss next month's event, June 24th. It's the last Wednesday of the month, which is the 24th, 6 to 8 p.m. Brittany Miller from Moz is going to be here. She's going to be talking about the hottest stuff in SEO these days. That's going to be great. We don't have the exact kind of logistics for her session picked out, but we will, and it's going to be amazing. So we're going to go from PPC to SEO. It's going to be the summer of search here in our virtual MnSearch meeting. So really appreciate your time here tonight, and hope that you got a lot of value. And with that, I think we will adjourn things for the night. So from MnSearch, we appreciate all of you, and thank you for joining. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.